Welcome to the Explainer. So, if you're an aspiring global business operator, and by that I mean you're working hard to build a thriving, legitimate enterprise that touches the wider world, then this one is absolutely for you. Whether you're selling a product abroad, maybe sourcing some parts overseas, or even just hiring international talent, you are officially operating in a globalized economy. And hey, that's a great thing. But there is this massive, really complex body of law that most business owners literally never learn about until they accidentally trip right over it. So today, we're going to explore how to navigate these rules and build a rock-solid, compliant enterprise just by avoiding these accidental landmines. Let's dive in. To see exactly why these rules matter so much, let's just jump right into a high-stakes, real-world reality. Imagine for a second you rely on a completely critical piece of software to run your daily operations. Then, literally overnight, with zero warning, it's just gone. And we're not talking about a server crash here, but because an invisible legal tripwire got crossed. Sounds kind of crazy, right? Well, this isn't hypothetical. This exact scenario actually played out on a massive scale back in June 2026, involving the major AI company Anthropic. Okay, so here's how fast this happened. On June 9th, 2026, Anthropic launched two of its most powerful artificial intelligence models, Claude Fable 5 and Mythos 5. Huge deal, right? But just 3 days later, on the evening of June 12th, the U.S. Commerce Department stepped in and issued an immediate directive, citing national security authorities. They ordered an absolute global halt on any foreign national access to those models worldwide. The reported trigger for this? Intelligence regarding a jailbreak, basically a technique that could theoretically bypass the system's safeguards and unlock advanced cybersecurity capabilities within the model. Now, I should note, the exact national security details of that trigger, they were never actually made public. But the consequence of that order? Immediate and massive. See, because Anthropic couldn't reliably filter its millions of users by nationality in real time, they literally had to pull the plug globally. They disabled Fable 5 and Mythos 5 for all customers worldwide that very night. For 19 whole days, the product was completely in the dark before those controls were eventually lifted. Just think about the businesses that had quietly built their workflows around those specific models. They were completely stranded, literally overnight. Now, this whole situation brings up a really provocative question. The government used an export control order to shut down an AI model running in the cloud. But how do you export something without it ever physically leaving the country? It's wild to think about. But to understand the Anthropic shutdown, we really need to unpack the incredibly counterintuitive legal concept that actually caused it. And here it is. This is that massive, invisible tripwire, the deemed export. Under U.S. law, releasing controlled technology, source code, or even just technical know-how to a foreign national, even if they are standing right next to you inside the United States, and get this, even if they're your own employee, that legally counts as an export to that person's home country. Yep, you can commit a federal export violation without a single item ever crossing a physical border. This modern reality is a stark contrast to what we normally think of as an export, isn't it? A traditional export is simple to picture. You're shipping physical boxes of goods across a border on a massive cargo ship or an airplane. But today's reality is completely different. An export is just as likely to be an engineer sharing technical know-how at a whiteboard, or a company giving an international employee a login to cloud software. And it's this exact misunderstanding that trips up so many honest, hardworking businesses. So, as aspiring business leaders, how do you actually navigate this stuff? Well, you really need to know the three plain rules of global trade. Let's break it down. First, you've got the Commerce Department, which runs the EAR. That governs dual-use goods, meaning ordinary commercial items like electronics or software that could also have a military use. Second, the State Department runs ITAR, which strictly controls actual weapons and defense articles. And third, the Treasury Department's OFAC handles sanctions. They dictate who you are legally allowed to do business with at all, regardless of what you're actually selling. Now, for most of you running an ordinary, legitimate business, that first one, the Commerce Department's EAR, that is the regime you're most likely going to bump into. It covers everyday advanced computing, chemicals, and artificial intelligence. And it has a massive global reach. The controls literally follow the item. Meaning, if you sell a controlled product to a totally legitimate buyer, but then they re-export it to an embargoed country, your business can actually be on the hook for that. Because these rules are so incredibly expansive, the government publishes what they call red flags. So, if a customer is being really evasive about what they're going to use your product for, or say a small local bakery suddenly tries to order sophisticated high-tech lasers, or someone wants to pay straight cash for wildly expensive items, yeah, those are major red flags. Encountering these creates a strict legal duty for you, the business operator, to step up and ask questions. You absolutely cannot simply look the other way and cash the check. And there's a very specific reason why you can't just look away. Export controls operate on a principle called strict liability. Now, that is a hard legal truth, meaning I didn't know is not a valid defense. Intent to break the law isn't actually required for you to be penalized. Even honest, totally accidental mistakes can result in severe civil fines, a complete loss of your export privileges, and just massive disruptions to your enterprise. So, the crucial point here is that we are firmly entering a whole new frontier. These laws are rapidly expanding. They're not just about regulating physical cargo loaded onto ships anymore. Today, export controls are heavily focused on things like advanced semiconductors, the chips that power modern data centers, and, of course, artificial intelligence models themselves. The rules are fundamentally shifting from controlling physical items to controlling who has digital access. And this shift in focus is intersecting with some pretty deep contractual and policy debates, too. Take the February 2026 contract breakdown between Anthropic and the Pentagon. It is a fascinating look at how policy decisions carry real, heavy commercial consequences. So Anthropic maintained that its AI models absolutely required strict acceptable use safeguards, basically drawing red lines against mass domestic surveillance and fully autonomous weapons. But the Pentagon, they argued that the military needs full operational control of the technology for all lawful purposes, without a private vendor inserting itself into the chain of command. Well, when those negotiations collapsed, the Pentagon officially designated Anthropic a supply chain risk on February 27, 2026. This was reportedly the very first time this specific supply chain authority was used against a domestic U.S. company. Anthropic sued, arguing the move was retaliation for its protected speech on AI safety, and the whole situation immediately fell into really complex ongoing federal litigation. It's basically a textbook situation where reasonable people disagree, but the business lesson, that is undeniably clear. Who you do business with and the core terms you stand by can fundamentally alter your commercial landscape. Okay, so how do we actually protect our businesses from all of this? Well, here are your survival skills. First up, map your dependencies. Second, continuously screen your customers, your investors, and your employees against government watch lists. Third, implement robust digital controls. Think geofencing for any cloud services you offer. Fourth, establish a formal export compliance program to really document your efforts. And finally, always have a fallback option ready for your most critical software. You got to think of this compliance program as the safety seatbelt for your entire business operation. That June 2026 Anthropic shutdown we talked about earlier really drives home this ultimate business continuity lesson. Vendor concentration is a massive operational risk. If your entire business relies on one single tool, and that tool can just vanish overnight because an invisible trade roll was tripped by someone else halfway across the world, your business is in serious peril. You absolutely must have a backup plan if you want to survive in today's volatile global market.
As we wrap up this explainer, I do want to leave you with a helpful reminder to protect yourselves. What we've explored today is general education, guys. It's not legal advice. Export and sanctions laws change constantly, sometimes literally overnight. Protecting your future business means seeking out expert counsel, like a qualified international trade attorney, when you're making these big operational moves. So I want to leave you with this one provocative thought. If the absolute most crucial tool your business relies on suddenly vanished tonight because of an invisible border, would your business survive tomorrow? Keep learning, keep planning, and stay compliant.